Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. The 31st floor of a high-rise residential building in the heart of Hong Kong. Officers paused in front of apartment 1309. This wasn't your typical call. It didn't come from a witness or a concerned neighbor. It came from the apartment's owner himself. Over the phone, a man's voice said, "Something terrible has happened. You need to come immediately." When officers arrived, they were met with silence. No one answered the door, but from beneath it seeped a powerful, suffocating odor of decay. The building's security guard confirmed that residents on the lower floors had been complaining about a stench for several days, convinced the source was coming from this very unit. Police knocked. No response, only faint, unintelligible sounds, like someone murmuring to themselves behind the door. When they finally forced their way in, a wave of putrid air hit them instantly. Inside, the apartment was in chaos. Stained walls, scattered belongings, the air thick and stale. In the middle of the living room lay the body of a young woman, partially unclothed, with visible wounds to her neck and upper chest. Investigators quickly determined that she had been gone for quite some time. Not far from her, a man sat barefoot on the floor, holding a blood-stained knife. His eyes were vacant. His lips moved constantly, muttering incoherently about God, evil, and that it had already happened. He showed no reaction to the arrival of law enforcement. Officers quickly restrained him and called in a medical team. Then began the preliminary assessment of the scene. On the table, open alcohol bottles, traces of powdery substances on saucers, takeout boxes. On the floor, plastic bags, tangled cords, empty medication packages, and discarded clothing. Everything pointed to a prolonged, disordered stay inside the apartment. The forensic team worked for hours. The woman's body remained on the floor while they documented evidence, took photographs, and mapped out the layout. No one expected what came next. One officer approached a glass door that led to the balcony. It was sealed shut. When he slid it open, he recoiled. The same overpowering stench hit him again. Outside was a large black suitcase, and the smell coming from it left no doubt. The suitcase was closed, but its shape, weight, and the foul scent made the contents horrifyingly clear. Inside was another body. The remains had been dismembered. The parts were carefully wrapped in fabric and tightly packed. It looked less like an attempt to dispose of evidence and more like someone had gone to great lengths to conceal what had happened. The suitcase had been placed in the far corner of the balcony, directly beneath a clothes line, perhaps in the hope that it would go unnoticed. Both victims were women, young with East Asian features. No passports, ID, or personal belongings were found near them. Their names, their stories, even the time they lost their lives remained unknown. But one thing was certain. Something horrific had unfolded in that apartment, and it hadn't happened overnight. Investigators documented every detail. The man found inside the apartment was taken into custody under heightened security. There were no signs of a struggle on his body. The medical team confirmed he was conscious, but his behavior remained highly erratic. He offered no explanations, only fragmented phrases about guilt, blood, and the final week. Hong Kong is one of the most densely populated urban centers in the world. Within a compact space, millions of people live amid constant noise, urgency, and overcrowding. Towering buildings stretch skyward, packed closely with barely any gaps in between. Every square foot comes at a premium, and most residents squeeze into tight apartments, often divided by thin partitions, where multiple individuals may share a single room. Those with more resources live higher up, behind thick glass facades in high-rise residences, outfitted with security, surveillance, and private elevators. The contrasts are striking. At the base of these gleaming towers, narrow alleyways wind through grimy drainage lines, impromptu street stalls, and strange storefronts with no signage. During the day, these places seem deserted, but at night, they come alive. In certain neighborhoods, behind the facade of bars and clubs filled with loud music and flowing drinks, a hidden system operates, one that quietly disguises unauthorized escort services as nightlife entertainment. Officially, these spots are listed as lounges or karaoke bars, where women work as hosts, simply to entertain guests with conversation. In reality, many arrangements are made for private meetups at hotels or apartments. These businesses aren't openly advertised, but they're known among a select crowd, wealthy men, often foreigners, who know exactly where to go. The women working there usually don't have legal work permits and find themselves in a vulnerable position. They can't seek help, can't report mistreatment. Any complaint could risk deportation. Many of these women originally came to Hong Kong from underprivileged areas of Indonesia and the Philippines. In the past, they worked legally as domestic helpers under work visas, but once those permits expired, they had to leave. Some later returned on tourist visas, hoping to earn again and support their families back home. Club work often becomes their only available source of income. On paper, it's entertainment. In reality, it's off-the-books labor with risks, no protections, and strict oversight from the people who run the business. In the daily rush of city life, the disappearance of one woman rarely raises alarm, especially when she has no documentation, no legal status, and no formal ties. When someone in that position vanishes, it's not usually met with concern. It's often dismissed as routine. At best, a roommate or someone nearby might try to look for her. At worst, she's simply forgotten. Across the city, it's common to find apartments being rented off the books. Several tenants may share one room, paying in cash. It's simple, convenient, no background checks, no questions. For migrants, it's often the only housing option they can afford, but that same setup makes them almost invisible. If one of the tenants doesn't return one night, no one raises an alarm, even if days go by. Hong Kong runs like a well-oiled machine. There's no time to pause for one person. Those who fall outside the official system are treated as expendable. Their disappearance isn't considered an event. It's just another line in a statistic that no one pays attention to. Sumarti Ningsai was born in a small, impoverished village in Indonesia. Her family lived in difficult conditions from the beginning. They struggled to afford basic necessities, food, medicine, and school supplies for her younger brothers. When she became an adult, the decision was made. She would go abroad to earn money. Hong Kong was the only place where she could secure a work visa and find employment as a domestic helper. The work was tough but steady. Long hours, little freedom, and living inside the home of her employers. Despite the hardship, Sumarti saw it as a chance. Her primary goal was to send as much money home as possible. She worked for 2 years until her visa expired. Unable to get it renewed, she had to return to her village. But nothing had changed there. Still the same poverty, the same pressure. Her family was counting on her. So Sumarti applied for a tourist visa and went back to Hong Kong. That status didn't allow her to work legally, but there was no alternative. Her family needed the income, and there were no other options. Jessie Lorena faced a similar story. Also from a struggling village in Indonesia, she came to Hong Kong in 2006 with a valid work visa. For years, she worked legally as a domestic worker, extending her permits when possible. Everything changed in 2012 when her renewal was denied. Like Sumarti, Jessie had to return home, but eventually, she too came back to Hong Kong on a tourist visa, hoping to find some kind of work. Circumstances brought them to the same establishment, a club that officially posed as a bar with entertainment. In reality, it catered to clients seeking more than just drinks. That's where the women worked, despite having no legal right to be employed. Technically, they were there to create an atmosphere, socialize, dance. But most arrangements happened outside the club, private meetups for money. The pay was low, but they had no choice. They couldn't go to the authorities. Their status left them unprotected. No one checked their working conditions. They worked at night, lived in small rented rooms with no paperwork. Club management maintained quiet but constant control. Refusal or complaint meant immediate dismissal, and for someone working off the books, that meant no more income. It was under these conditions that both women disappeared. Sumarti vanished on October 26th. That evening, she had been at the club, spent time with clients, and then left. No one saw her again. Jessie went missing 6 days later on November 1st. She had also been on shift, then left, but never returned to her rented room. Despite the short gap between their disappearances, no one made the connection. Neither the police nor the club's management linked the two cases. Both women had no legal status, weren't in any official records. Their vanishings caused no public reaction. Only later did it become clear. They had both disappeared from the same location, followed the same work pattern, and, as would later be discovered, both crossed paths with the same individual. But at the time they went missing, it was seen as just another loss among those living in the shadows. When Jessie Lorena didn't return home, her roommate began to worry. She first went to the club where Jessie worked. Staff told her Jessie had shown up the evening of November 1st, spent some time with a guest, and then left with him. No one had seen her since. Her phone went unanswered. After several days without any word, the roommate reached out to law enforcement. Only after persistent urging was a missing person report officially filed. Police requested surveillance footage from the club. In one of the videos, Jessie could be seen speaking with a man who was a frequent visitor. They were together for a short time before leaving the premises. Club staff recognized the man immediately. He came in often, always alone. He was calm, reserved, didn't socialize much, and never caused a disturbance. He also stood out for consistently leaving generous tips. Authorities were able to identify him quickly. His name was Jutting, a 29-year-old British national. He lived in a luxury high-rise, in an apartment on the 31st floor. According to surveillance footage, that's where he took Jessie on the day she disappeared. Police attempted to contact him, but he didn't respond. Sometime later, however, Jutting himself called. He said that something terrible had taken place in his apartment and asked for officers to come immediately. A response team was dispatched to the address he provided. What happened next became the starting point of a criminal investigation. Until then, Jutting hadn't raised any red flags. He gave the impression of a successful, well-educated professional, a young banker, part of the financial elite, with a polished appearance and an impeccable background. He worked at a major American investment firm and was considered a rising star. People who knew him described him as competent, punctual, and private. His social status, behavior in public, and lifestyle all aligned with the image of a confident international professional thriving in a global city. But what police discovered in his apartment shattered that illusion. Officers were stunned by the contrast between Jutting's public persona and what they found behind closed doors. The upscale apartment was in disarray. Inside was the body of a woman showing signs of severe trauma, along with numerous items pointing to serious criminal acts. Among the evidence were knives, restraints, containers linked to restricted substances, and digital devices containing material that later became key to the charges filed against him. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the high-rise. The recordings showed both women entering the building on separate days. Neither of them was seen leaving. Security staff hadn't intervened, residents had unrestricted access, and cameras were mainly used for archived monitoring. Both women spent their final days in an apartment legally registered to someone with a spotless public image. After Jutting's arrest, he didn't resist. He acknowledged what had happened. There was no sign of panic or regret in his demeanor. He appeared worn out, detached, almost as if the situation didn't concern him personally. Jutting was born in London into a family that gradually achieved financial stability. His father worked as an engineer, and his mother was involved in business. Through consistent effort, they managed to build a comfortable life, eventually purchasing a home in a well-regarded suburban neighborhood. Growing up, Rurik lacked nothing. He had access to quality education, care, and attention. His parents heavily invested in his development, with high hopes for his future. From an early age, Rurik showed strong academic talent. He consistently performed well in school, excelling in both math and literature. Former classmates remembered him as quiet and withdrawn, but intellectually sharp. He avoided large social groups and preferred solitude. His academic success earned him a place at Cambridge, one of the UK's most prestigious universities. At university, he pursued economics. Soon after graduation, he landed a job with a major investment firm in London. His career advanced quickly. He moved between increasingly prominent banks, taking on more senior roles each time. Within just a few years, he earned a reputation as one of the most promising young professionals in finance. Colleagues described him as extremely driven, detail-oriented, and hardworking. When his employer, an American banking corporation, expanded operations in Hong Kong, Jutting was offered a key position in the new office. He accepted without hesitation. The move significantly increased his income. He rented a high-end apartment in an exclusive complex, setting up a spacious home with panoramic views. Everything about his lifestyle looked like a textbook success story: youth, prestige, wealth, and social standing. Outwardly, he blended in perfectly with other professionals in the city's financial scene. But behind that polished exterior were traits that didn't stand out at first glance. Jutting was an introvert. He kept a small social circle, avoided personal connections, and had no interest in public life. At the same time, he carried a quiet sense of superiority. Those who interacted with him professionally acknowledged his competence, but rarely remembered anything personal. He shared little about his life and kept to himself. The first major disruption to his seemingly stable life came through a personal relationship. He had been involved with a woman named Sarah. Their relationship had lasted a while, though it was long distance. She lived and worked in the US while he was based in Hong Kong. According to people close to him, he was deeply attached to her and took the relationship seriously. The breakup came unexpectedly. Sarah began seeing someone else without giving Jutting advance notice. The experience hit him hard. He fell into depression, began therapy, and was prescribed medication. His mental state began to show in his behavior: increased irritability, deeper isolation, and reduced focus. His relationships at work deteriorated. He missed deadlines, and his reputation started to decline. Internally, he was unraveling, a shift not immediately visible to others, but one that escalated quickly. During this period, his life began to unravel. He started using illegal substances, attending parties, and engaging in casual relationships. Gradually, he lost control, not only over his career, but also over himself. Around the same time, he began dating a new girlfriend, Ariane Guarin. Young, attractive, and active on social media, she frequently shared photos of their trips, dinners, and events. Their online presence appeared flawless: luxurious interiors, expensive restaurants, scenic flights. However, behind the beautiful images were arguments, outbursts of aggression, and the growing coldness with which Rurik treated her. The illegal substances heightened his irritability, making him harsh and unpredictable. The relationship soon fell apart. From that point, Jutting's life spiraled further out of control. His consumption of illicit substances increased. He became reclusive, rarely leaving his apartment, and disappeared from the radar of colleagues and acquaintances. His behavior grew so unstable that even those around him began to avoid contact. He lost friends, professional connections, and trust within the banking community. Simultaneously, alarming signs of deep psychological disturbances emerged. His social media posts became strange and illogical, filled with metaphors and phrases indicating internal destruction and a loss of connection with reality. He began using imagery of darkness, fear, and demise. A post from October 27th resembled a farewell note: "I'm jumping into the darkness." The journey has begun. I'm not afraid, but I'm excited. The first step is the hardest. This message puzzled those who read it, but no one took action. The next day, he resigned, without explanations or prior discussions. His work email was deactivated, but the auto-reply function remained active. Any email sent to his address automatically received the response: "I am out of the office indefinitely. Please do not contact a psychopath. In case of emergency, contact God. Though I suspect custody has passed to the devil." This message seemed strange and inappropriate to colleagues. Most perceived it as a failed attempt at dark humor. Later, the email's content became part of the evidence. All these events occurred within a few days. The abrupt change in behavior, loss of self-control, social isolation, and aggressive forms of self-expression all indicated a deep internal crisis. However, no one intervened. Neither former colleagues, friends, nor acquaintances raised the alarm. His downfall was rapid, and stopping it was no longer possible. After Rurik Jutting's arrest and the search of his 31st floor apartment, the main phase of the investigation began. Investigators seized his mobile phone, revealing a horrifyingly complete picture of his crimes. The device contained dozens of videos and photographs in which he documented his actions toward two women. The content left no doubt. Everything that happened was deliberate, meticulously recorded, and intentional on his part. The first video was recorded shortly after the death of Sumarti Ningsi. The The camera focused on Rurik, sitting next to the body. His speech was calm and cold-blooded. "My name is Rurik. 5 minutes ago I killed this woman. Since Saturday she was here. Today is Monday. I kept her locked up. She was good. But that doesn't mean anything," he stated. These words conveyed neither remorse nor shock. He described the events as if summarizing an experiment. In other videos, he shared thoughts about what had been happening inside the apartment. He said he barely got off the couch, survived on delivered pizza, consumed illegal substances, and drank alcohol. The recordings painted a picture of someone conscious, but completely detached from moral norms. "I don't feel guilt. There's something, but it's not guilt. I feel like a stranger to myself," he said. These were not impulsive actions. Every move was carefully recorded on camera. Surveillance footage showed him leaving the apartment and returning with 2 large duffel bags. Inside were saws, knives, and kitchen tools. All of it was used to dismember Sumarti's body. He placed the remains into a heavy-duty bag and left it on the balcony. Afterward, he made no effort to cover his tracks or leave the city. A few days later, he went back to the same club where he'd met his first victim. There, he approached Jessie Larina. He offered her money to come to his apartment. Unlike the previous time, he didn't wait. The crime took place that same night. Her body was left in the middle of the room, and Jutting was still beside it when officers arrived. He was covered in blood, holding a knife, and speaking incoherently. The recordings made it clear that these acts weren't the result of a breakdown, but a conscious decision. After the first crime, he chose to repeat it. His own words were chilling. "That was an experience. I want to do it again." The video files became more than just evidence. They were direct confessions, captured and preserved by the perpetrator himself. Following his arrest, Rurik Jutting was taken into custody, and during the initial interview, he immediately gave a full confession. Without pressure or hesitation, he described what had happened, made no excuses, and didn't attempt to soften the facts. He admitted to holding one of the women captive for several days before ending her life and detailed the sequence of events. Investigators noted that he spoke calmly, showing no visible emotion. The next step was a mandatory court-ordered psychological evaluation. Several specialists assessed him. The goal was to determine whether Jutting had the capacity to understand his actions and their consequences at the time of the crimes. Every professional involved reached the same conclusion. He was of sound mind and fully accountable. Though he was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, a condition marked by egocentrism, lack of empathy, and a tendency to dominate, this did not absolve him legally or exempt him from trial. The defense team attempted to reduce the sentence, arguing that he had been in a fragile emotional state, battling a substance dependency, and suffering psychological instability during the period in question. Former girlfriends testified that he had once been balanced, caring, and non-confrontational. The defense tried to portray the tragedy as the collapse of a person under the weight of addiction and mental deterioration. However, the court did not accept this narrative. Investigators demonstrated that the crimes were not crimes of passion. They were carefully premeditated, supported by recordings in which Jutting methodically described his actions. The court classified his conduct as intentional, cold, and brutal. The evidence, his own confessions, phone records, photos, and video files, left no room to interpret his actions as those of someone out of touch with reality or in a temporary state of crisis. In October 2016, the court delivered its final verdict. Rurik Jutting was found guilty on both counts. He received 2 life sentences, 1 for each crime, without the possibility of parole. The decision meant he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. During the sentencing, he remained silent. His face showed no emotion, no gestures, no expressions, no trace of inner turmoil. Even when it became clear that he would never walk free again, Jutting displayed neither remorse nor resistance. His complete indifference became the final note in a deeply disturbing case. Despite the numerous recordings and his own confessions, Jutting never provided a clear answer to the question, why did he do it? The court interpreted this as a lack of remorse and a conscious choice to engage in extreme aggression. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.